Welcome to everyone. I'm so glad you're all here. For anyone that's new, this is a group that is a space created specifically for DSRCT patients, caregivers, and care partners, people who are living this experience. Our purpose is to community connection and the sharing of information and experiences with others who truly understand. We all come to this journey from different places in the world, different backgrounds, beliefs, ages, and different points in the experience. Some of you are newly diagnosed. Some of you have been at this for years. Some are caring for someone you love. Whatever brought you here, you belong here. We give each person grace, kindness, and respect. Perspectives will vary, and that's not just okay. It's one of the most valuable parts about this group. You are the expert of your own experience, and everyone here brings something real to the table. I'm really excited that Jessica Rodriguez is joining us today as our speaker. A couple weeks ago, we heard David Loyosa speak to the group about his experience after being diagnosed at 15 with DSRCT. He's now 11 years NED. And I have talked to Jessica since probably their DSRCT diagnosis when you first found the Facebook group. And that's how I got a hold of David to join us. And I was so happy that Jessica is also willing to come and kind of give her side of their experience, because as a caregiver, you're going through the same experience, but a different version of it to a certain extent. So Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm just going to turn it over to her. She's going to share, and then after she's finished telling her story, we will open up the floor for the rest of the group in the second hour. Just keep in mind at this time, we are being recorded. So I'm going to change my screen. And from this point on, we're going to be on recording. So just keep that in mind. When we do the Q&A, if you want to ask a question, just keep in mind that this is going to be recorded, okay? And Jessica, thank you so much for being with us. Go ahead. I would love for you to start.
Hi. Okay, so I think some of y'all met my son about a week ago, David Loyosa. He is, considered a long-term survivor at this point. So my perspective on how things happened, it was very fast. David was complaining of pressure up near his gallbladder, and I had gallbladder stones when I was very young. So we assumed that he may have been in the same boat. He was getting ready for football. We had to go to his physical. I asked him, are you in a lot of pain that you need to make a new appointment, or can you wait for the physical? He said he could wait. So when we got to the physical, it just it happened so fast. The doctor checked him and said, I'm just going to order an ultrasound, and which was weird because, you don't typically turn to an ultrasound immediately. But he said, we're going to go ahead and order the ultrasound. We're going to, we'll do it right now. He called the imaging place, and we headed on over. They did the image. They took a really long time going over each quadrant of his abdomen. The tech walked out. She told us that she was going to talk to the radiologist first and that she would be back. So at that moment, we knew something. They saw something. We didn't know what, but they saw something. At this point, I was very ignorant. We did not have anybody in our family that had dealt with cancer. Not my parents, not my siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles. No one had had cancer. So it was not an immediate thought for us. The radiologist came in and said, well, we found a mass, and it seems to kind of just be floating around. It doesn't have anything. It's not connected to anything. It's kind of just floating around. So he called the doctor, pediatrician, let the pediatrician know. They immediately moved us over to the CT with contrast side of the imaging place. So at that point, they did the contrast imaging. they could see it. Something was just floating around, is how they described it to us. It was not anywhere, wasn't connected to a kidney, to his bladder. It kind of just seemed to be floating there. So his doctor called me and said, we don't really know what it is, but it's not supposed to be there. So we're going to go ahead and make an appointment with the surgeon. So within a week, we were seeing the surgeon, and in a few days, we were having surgery. We had surgery July 31st, and I remember walking in after the surgery. They said, we have him in recovery. From there, we're going to go ahead and admit him. They told us he has cancer and it has spread. So we were like, I don't even know what that means. I said, I don't even, what do you mean he has cancer? It was very ignorant. Had a mass that was so big that it had broken in half. And I guess the term that they used was that it's seeded, and it's seeded everywhere, spreading tumors to grow in other places. But this piece that had broken off, it was just floating around. And this piece had its own, it had like a connection, and it was just connected to his pelvic area. And it was just this big mass. So they said they were going to call oncology. We were at Dell Children's Hospital in Austin, Texas. And that is a research hospital that's connected to UT Austin. So they said they were going to get their oncologist. They were moving David straight to a room to admit him so that we could talk to an oncologist at that time. David was very angry. He was very, very upset. There was a lot of feelings of why me? And this isn't real. So we went to the room, and the oncologist came in. Her name was, or is Dr. Fowler. She walked in and said, I'm Dr. Fowler. I'm an oncologist. I wanted to talk to you. And David cut her off and said, do I have cancer? And she said, yes. And he said, you can stop. Just go ahead and go. He didn't want to know anything at that point. I was shocked first that David had such an independence at that point. He was so strong to just voice what he was thinking at that point. None of us knew. I mean, all of that happened in the span of about a week and a half. It was very, very fast. So I walked out and I followed her, and she said, I don't want to talk to you without him around. And his behavior right now is 100% normal. This is very normal for our teens. Let's give him some time to process it. She's like, I'll be back in a little bit, but for now, let's let him, kind of gather what we just said. So I said, okay. We went back in, and they had immediately started biopsying, the tumor that they had resected. And she came back probably the next day and told us that she was 95% sure that it was synovial sarcoma, but they needed to wait for that third biopsy to come back. I didn't know this at the time, but they do have to biopsy 3 times to make sure that it's the same, pattern in the tumor, so that's how they diagnose. So we got our stuff. David was released. We were able to come home. They said they'd be in touch. I had a couple of connections to MD Anderson, and a friend of mine was able to call them and ask, just kind of tell them David's story a little bit of what had just happened. So I got a call from MD Anderson, and they asked if we wanted to go there. And they're a cancer research hospital that is also affiliated with UT Austin. So we decided, we can work, in both. Let's just see what they have to say. So we went there. They wanted their own biopsy. They did work with Dell Children's Hospital, though, to be able to get that biopsy. And it was fairly quickly. We did what we had to do there. We packed our stuff. We were already on our way back when the oncologist from MD Anderson called me and said, it's desmoplastic small round cell tumor. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, we have a name, like we can fix this. But then we looked it up. And David was at an age where he could look it up too. So that was really hard. So here we were driving back from Houston to Austin, and David was like, yeah, I'm not treating, there's not going to be a point to this. So I allowed him, at this point, a lot of it had to do with David wasn't given any choices. He didn't choose to have cancer. He didn't choose for it to be one of the worst cancers. He didn't choose, all these things were just stacking against him. So I was giving him a lot of, what do you want to do? I wasn't going to not let him treat, but I did give him the opportunity to make the choice that he was going to treat. So we got back, kind of had our talks here and there and discussed all kinds of stuff. We were seen back in Austin again. In Austin, the oncologist from Austin
Jessica,
told us
I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
We're having a little bit of a technical, like your video's kind of breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure what we could maybe do to fix it, but it's kind of going in and out. So any tech nerds on here? David, any advice other than stopping and coming back or something? Oh, that's clearer. There we go. Are you on a computer or on a phone?
I'm on a laptop.
Okay. Maybe refresh your screen. See what happens, and then we'll get back started. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and if it's will not gonna help, just turn off the video. Maybe it's like overstimulated network. We are usually doing it at work. Then the audio will gonna continue perfectly fine, and in few minutes it will just gonna back normal.
Sorry, guys. I hate to jump in, but I didn't want her to start cutting out again, not catch it. Jessica, do you want to try your audio and see if that'll work? Maybe that refresh the screen was not a good idea.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, yes. And it's very clear now, so I apologize. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. No, thank you. Thank you for that. So MD Anderson, we found out we had desmoplastic, came back to Austin. Austin said that they could work with MD Anderson, figure out a chemo cocktail, and we could do chemo in Austin, which was home. So I asked David what he wanted to do. Do you want to go to Houston where they see it more? Or do you want to stay in Austin where we're closer to home? But they will be working, they'll be monitoring it. So he said that he would rather do it at home. So we gave him that. Did his I guess it's called the P6 protocol. So that's what David was on. He did 10 sessions. So it was over the course of probably 4 months, because it was just 10 sessions, and he was going back every 14 days. So when he stayed for 5 days, he'd go back in 9 to start it again. And, then he was there for 2 days, and he'd come back in 12 to do it again. It was very difficult. I was given the task of giving him a Neupogen shot between chemo treatments so that his bone marrow would replenish. And they were also giving him Bactrim so that he wouldn't get any infections. He didn't take it. He wouldn't take it. It was one of those choose your battles. If you're going to let me in here and give you a shot and you don't want to take your pill, don't take your pill. So that was our, and he even made those deals when he would go to when he was admitted into the hospital, and there was one particular nurse that was like, well, if you drink these Gatorades and I don't have to remind you, I won't give you the Bactrim. So he would drink his Gatorades, so he didn't have to take that Bactrim. He just didn't want any more medication in his system. He was just tired. And again, we had to give him a little bit of control over the choices of what was going on with his body. Only he could feel what was happening. So once chemo was finished, everything was finished, we were going to move on to HIPEC. By this time, we had already met Dr. Hayes Jordan. I didn't know until you met with David that the HIPEC was still a clinical trial at that time. I had no idea. I thought it was a surgery that was being done, that's the surgery that was done for desmoplastic. But we had already met with Dr. Hayes Jordan. She was very, I hate to use the word fascinated, but she was very fascinated with the case. She was excited to work with us, excited to continue her research. So we did the HIPEC surgery. It took about 14 hours, 257 tumors from his pelvic area up to his diaphragm. That whole area had 257 tumors. And I remember when it was over and we sat down with Dr. Hayes Jordan, David's father said, "Did you get them all?" And she said, "Yeah." He said, are you sure that you got them all?" And she said, "Yes, I got them all." And it was, "Are you sure that you got them?" She's like, "Yes, I got them all." So it was like, oh my gosh, that was a very like a, what happens now? What happens now? Because before that surgery, when David was being prepped, the nurse that was on duty said, they do this surgery to prolong your life. Because when the cancer comes back, not if the cancer comes back, but when the cancer comes back. David just looked at her and said, "Well, I don't want to do the HIPEC surgery. I don't want to do that then. If it's going to come back anyway, then why am I putting my body through this?" And the doctor, Dr. Hayes Jordan said, "No, like, I'm going to get them all and you're going to be okay." So we said, okay, we did it. From there, I think that was so hard. David's body just reacted. It wasn't horrible, but clearly it wasn't good. He stayed in the hospital at MD Anderson. We had to move our family over there. My parents, we live in Texas. My parents live in the Rio Grande Valley. They had to move up to Central Texas to take care of my two others who were in kinder and in fourth grade. And my husband and I moved to Houston. And we took David to Houston. We got an apartment over there. And we did the HIPEC surgery. And then we were going to have to do radiation. And we chose to do radiation at MD Anderson, where they told us this is really just a blanket to, we already took everything out, but this is just one more thing to ensure that it doesn't come back. So David did it again. And I think he mentioned that the next, after radiation finished, radiation was the hardest part for him. He couldn't control his, I guess that the regurgitation, he couldn't control it. It would just come. And at that point, they put us into palliative care. I don't know if he mentioned that. Just because they said that was something that you do after this harsh treatment. So we went into palliative care. That's where they started with the THC so that he could start eating again. It worked. He got his strength back. He finished in February. I think in March. It was about March, around spring break time. So the middle of March, that he got up one day and just said, "I think I feel better." And it was like, "Really?" And he said, I think I feel better. And he went out. He went out and started hanging out with his friends again. And he never looked back. And that's where we've been. And they did want him to do maintenance chemo, but he refused. So.
And how hard was that? Like, I mean, can you talk about, I mean, it sounds like it was hard from the beginning with a teenager who very much wanted to make decisions for himself and fought you on kind of every step of the way. So how hard was it when you had to kind of just make the decision, okay, we're just going to go forward the way and let him make this choice?
It was something that it was internal. It was very hard. It was very hard. I don't think I slept that night. I knew that we had the meeting the next day, and I knew that maintenance chemo had been spoken about already. So I knew also that he wasn't going to do it. He's very headstrong. So it was hard as a mom, because I had all these internal thoughts. What if it comes back because you let him make the decision that he didn't want maintenance chemo? Is it going to be my fault that, because I didn't force it on him? It was difficult. It was very, very hard. But at the end, I didn't sleep that night at all. Got up the next day and we went in, and I went in with an attitude of whatever happens at this point is going to happen. So whatever he says that's what we're going to have to do. We're just going to have to roll with it. And I mean, the moment they said, well, we really think that you need to be on maintenance chemo and we're going to keep you on it. And he said, well, what's that going to look like for me? Am I going to be able to play sports? Am I going to be able to be active? Is my hair going to fall out again? Am I going to be weak? Can I eat? Can I take out he didn't want his feeding tube anymore? Do I have to have the port on? And they said, yeah, you're going to need your feeding tube because you might get sick. You might lose your hair again. And this is a kid that was going back to school his senior year. So he said, no. And he jumped off the table and he walked out. And I just sat there with the oncologist, like, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I mean, let's see what happens in the next 3 months. And when you come back for scans, we'll see where we're at. And if he needs it, we'll do it, we'll do it at that time. So I said, okay. And we walked out and we came back in 3 months for a PET scan, and they kept saying he was NED. So no, we said no again to the chemo, and then CT scan, PET scan every three months until he reached, I guess, the year. And then they switched it to every 6 months until he reached the 5-year. And then they said, done. And Dr. Hayes Jordan said, every year that you get further and further away from it, the less likely that it's going to come back. So that gave him a lot of hope. So that's where we were with that. It was it was hard. It was very hard because I didn't want it to come back and, in my face that I allowed him to make that decision.
Well, and imagine the anxiety, right? We talk a lot in this group about the anxiety that comes with the process of scans, and I'm sure that made that even more heightened, having that decision weighing on your heart, and then having to go into scans every 3 months with that fear.
Yes, and then every time we went in, it was something else. So when we went into PET scans and they were getting him prepped, and they would come in with this little, steel contraption, and they would say, Mom, you need to get out because it's radiation. And, that fear that he already had DSRCT. I was giving him Neupogen shots, which ups your risk for leukemia. I was, we were having to do scans every 3 months, which ups your chance for cancer as well. So every time we went in, it was a is this going to be it? Are we going to find leukemia this time? Is the DSRCT back? Now do we have cancer because I keep making him come back and get scans? So it's very scary. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And thank God that David is great. I have PTSD from it. I have a lot of medical PTSD from having seen my child go through one of the hardest things I'll ever have to go through.
Maybe you can speak more to also just the impact on your whole family, right? You had 2 small children when mom moved to another city with her other brother. How has that looked in the after for you guys?
So that is one of those things that you don't realize the damage until later. My daughter was in 4th grade. So it was a pretty pivotal developmental year for her. She was in 4th grade. She was very smart. She was going through, she was getting awards. She was involved, and we weren't there. So I wasn't there when she got her awards at school. I wasn't there when she was having her sleepovers with friends. She was also in Girl Scouts. So she was in honors choir, and I wasn't there to go to those performances. I wasn't there to drop her off at practice and pick her up. And, and she was so strong. She was acted like she was so strong. But she was also in charge of walking her brother to school, to class. My mom would drop him off, but he was in kindergarten. So she would walk him to class and drop him off. So that was a lot of responsibility for a 9-year-old. And again, you don't see these things until later. When I go back and I look at her work from 4th grade, where she had to do projects, they were all about cancer and her brother having cancer and her wanting to be some sort of a social worker for cancer and being there to have resources for people who have cancer. And my youngest, he was in kindergarten, so all of his stuff was fun stuff, but they're all about grandma. There's nothing mom or dad related. It's all about my grandma, is my favorite person. And all of the things that you would normally get for Mother's Day, Father's Day, they were all for grandma. It was just all about my mom. So, which is cute and that's great and everything. But again, a developmental year of his life that mom wasn't around. Mom and dad weren't around. So that was hard. I don't work. I've been a stay-at-home mom our whole marriage. So we only have one income. That was difficult since my husband took off from work. He was on FMLA, so he burned his FMLA so that we could leave. We left for 3 months. So that was, hard when we only had just one income to be able to keep everything going in the house. So that was hard too. But we didn't ever express anything. We, again, it's sensitive, if we brought anything up, it was difficult to travel or whatever. I never wanted David to feel like this is because David got sick that we had to do this. And I never wanted him to feel like that. So it was really hard. There was a lot of internal and battles that I held. So now I have panic disorder.
Do you feel comfortable talking about kind of what you've done over the years since to deal with the PTSD and the panic disorder and some of the things that resulted from being his caregiver during that time?
It took me it's taken me the whole time to get help. I didn't know that is what was going on. I had no idea. It was one day we were just I was at home and I started feeling weird. It was just a weird feeling. And I felt like, I don't know, antsy, but I didn't ever have anxiety. So I didn't know what that felt like. I ended up going to the doctor that afternoon, and the doctor that I saw, she was a friend of mine, and she was my daughter's Girl Scout troop leader. So she said, I could tell you exactly what this is. And it's anxiety. It's PTSD from what you've been through. Like, you need to probably speak to someone. You probably need to be on a medication. But medications never worked. And it wasn't until I sought therapy that it finally started to level out. So I think it's really, really important that even if you don't think that it's a big deal, that you go to therapy and speak to someone and talk to someone that doesn't have any sort of bias towards, the illness or who you're surrounded by, who's with you, whether it's your child, your spouse. I really do think that therapy is important.
I agree. I think when you've kind of been on a long version of this, you come to a point where you realize that you maybe didn't realize the impact in so many ways, and it kind of catches up, and that can be a really hard thing to deal with. Do you feel like today, I know David sounds like he's doing really great. I know your daughter is like super accomplished and doing really wonderful as well. How's your youngest?
He's doing well. He's 16. I homeschool him. So he's doing great. I mean, everybody seems to be, doing good. We're all on a good path. I think for me, for mom, I'm the mother. I saw it. There's always that just waiting for the ball to drop. So it's hard. It's hard. And some days it's like, it's not going to drop. You're fine. Just keep going. And I do. But then, this is exactly what PTSD is. You smell alcohol, the rubbing alcohol from the hospitals, and that'll do it to me. Just that smell will be like, oh man, you'll remember.
I know for myself, I had some triggers that I really didn't recognize until years later. Like, oh, that was me having like a PTSD response, but I didn't know, I didn't have language for those things.
Right.
Didn't know that was happening because I was focused on taking care of my son and doing everything that needed to be done to get to the outcome we were trying to get to.
Right.
And I think that's a really natural thing. And a lot of us find ourselves in that position. And I think that's why it's important to talk about it. And as scary as it might be for people who are kind of newer in this journey to hear this reality, we share it because it's not something that you can't do something about. It's just something that needs to be added on the list of things to take care of throughout this journey, in my opinion. I don't think it's just, hope always is my thing, right? And I don't think it's a hopeless thing. Like everyone's going to be impacted. So this is awful. Everyone's going to be impacted. So get a toolbox for everyone.
Agreed.
Well, thank you so much. I want to open it up to the group for questions, unless you have more that you want to share. Is there anyone that wants to ask a question? Please go ahead and put your hand up. Dan?
Hey, Jessica.
Hi.
I'm sorry I actually missed the first call. So I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to that now and I even put my wife in, who never jumps on these, because I was like, this is a good story, please listen. So thanks so much for sharing. What I wanted to ask is, you mentioned effectively he had two masses, right? He had that floating one, and I suppose where it lived in his pelvis. But do you remember, what the spread of disease was for him? Like, what involvement did he just have? Kind of a singular mass, or, as you said, it's kind of everywhere sort of thing, or was it several medium to large size ones?
It ended up being a couple of large, or I guess large to medium sized. The one that they found, I guess they found by accident. It was between his bladder and his rectum. It was a big mass in there. That is the one that broke. It broke in half. And when it broke, this one piece was just floating around. So that's what they saw on the ultrasound, you know, when they were like, there's just something that's floating around in there. When they did the CT with contrast, they were able to see that mass that was between the one that broke, and they were also able to see, I think, one on his liver. But it was right on the surface of his liver. So we were under the impression that he had two masses. We didn't know, but when the doctor told us that it spread, I didn't know what that meant. And again, I went in with ignorance. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know what to, I didn't even know what cancer was. So, I mean, obviously I knew what it was, but I didn't know how severe this was, or what we were looking at. So it was the one big one that broke. When it broke, it seeded again. The surgeon didn't tell us how much, what she saw. She just said he has cancer and it has spread. So then when they did the following scans, we saw the one in the pelvic area and the one on the liver. We thought we were going in for two.
And Dan, I'm not sure if you caught it when Dr. Hayes Jordan did his surgery. She came out and said she removed 257 tumors from his abdomen. Was the total number at resection. Jessica, did they do anything to the liver? Did they remove the tumor from the liver, remove a part of the liver, or did that resolve with chemo?
They took off what they could. I know she just resected everything that she could, and David hasn't had, he's been NED. He did have an area that lit up in his liver like a few months later after everything was over. So we were scared again, but it was focal nodular hyperplasia is what they found in his liver. We were going to take it for what it was. That's what the tech said that it was. But Dr. Hayes Jordan said there's no way we can know unless we biopsy it. So they did, and it was the focal nodular hyperplasia. So that's it. Other than that, they just resected. I think he only had stuff that was on top. There wasn't actually anything in his liver. So they were able just to take those pieces out.
Thank you. Dee, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that that thing that you just mentioned that they found 3 months later, is that what they call the ghost scars? Like is that like just something that would be necrotic tissue?
I don't, it's an actual tumor.
But it was like, was it a tumor that kind of was killed? I think I just saw something about this because I'm going to ask my oncologist about it. I wrote it down. Is that something that it just, I think that the tumor dies and then the cells, and then the tumor's so big, it kind of falls over and it like just encases within that tumor and creates a scar and then puts the tumor to sleep. And then they call it like a ghost scar.
Jessica, did you say it's focal nodular hypoplasia?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's something. Oh, that's not it. Never mind. It's something different. Yeah.
Yeah, I put the words in the chat.
I just saw that. Yeah, that wasn't it. But thanks. Yeah, I was just curious because I just read something about ghost scars and it sounded very familiar to it. Because they had a guy that was, yeah, he was NED for like 3.5 years, and he had this tumor that just sat there for like at 3.5 centimeters, and it wasn't going anywhere. So they figured that was the ghost scar.
Oh no! Yeah. They just told us it was a benign tumor.
Okay.
That had to be really scary to go through that fear of that it was potentially recurrence until you did find out what it was.
It is. It's scary. And, you know, like I said before, we didn't have any family members that had dealt with cancer. So now I think everything's cancer. You know, my kids get sick and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, and we broke so many rules when David was sick, and then Christine gave him a lot of jaw pain, and we weren't supposed to give Motrin, but I did anyway because he was in pain. So now I have issues with wanting to give the kids Motrin for pain because I don't know if I'm masking something. So everything was scary. It was very scary.
Have you had anything aside from that liver benign tumor? Have you had other instances where has he had any abdominal adhesions or anything that you had to follow up with since then?
He was already 18, so mom got shut out, but he did have some issues with stomach cramping that happened shortly after, and it was scar tissue that formed on his intestines. So he went in, met with the nutritionist, and oddly enough, he was eating too much fiber. So they took him off of fiber, gave him a very limited amount that he could eat, and that was it. I know she said the scar tissue was like in a U shape, sort of. So the food would stay at the bottom. Food that was hard to digest, like fiber that stays in your system longer, would just sit there. So his stomach would cramp, and it was awful. I mean, he had some really hard nights of cramping. We weren't sure what the next step was going to be for him, but once he started eating less fiber, he started getting better. It hasn't recurred in quite a while. I'm almost scared to mention it.
No, and I think that's really normal. I have found in just the years that I've talked to people and in trying to get people to come speak to the group, that it's really, I think a lot of people who do get to the point where they're years away and it's kind of behind them, it's almost like you don't want to jinx yourself because that trauma is still there, right? So it's a lot. I try to explain like that there are long-term survivors, but you don't see them in the Facebook group because they're self-protecting to go back to life, because that the constant emotional strain of being in that group and seeing people go through this, or dealing with the fear of jinxing yourself or saying, you know, whatever is real for a lot of people.
Or sometimes saying the wrong thing, you know. A lot of people, I told David the other day, I was friends with a lot of people on the group, but they all deleted me. And I said, well, but with reason. You know, either their kids passed on or their kids were really sick, and it was hard for them to see that mine kept going. Mine got better, and it doesn't seem fair. It's survivor's guilt. And so, yeah, I know that I've stayed quiet quite a bit because it's hard I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I totally relate, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that honesty is really important, because it's easy to look at the Facebook groups and to look at the statistics and think like survivors aren't out there. They are, but for what you're explaining is the reason why they're not out there waving their banner, because they feel terribly guilty that they're somehow lucky enough to be here, right? And it feels unfair because so many people try so hard and don't get the outcome that you guys got. So it's hard. It's hard to be on the side of it where you are surviving, and it's hard to be on the other side. And I think just being able to honestly talk about that is important for our community, so that we can all make space for each other wherever anyone's at.
I agree.
Does anyone else have any questions? Well, thank you. I'm so grateful. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm sure that I forgot a lot of things along the way. But I'm open to answering any questions. If there is anything that anybody wants to talk about in private, didn't want to bring up here, has something else that they remember later, My Facebook's open. I gave Laura my phone number. I'd be happy if you shared it with anybody that asks. Whatever's easier. I can also share my email if that's easier. And I know it's scary. You're not alone. There's plenty of us out there that have information that can help.
And experience that is so valuable. And I'm just so grateful for you to come and share your story of hope and to be open to sharing with the community and connecting with people. I think we have so much that we can learn from each other, even if it's not necessarily a medical solution, just like how to do this. And even though your road has been hard and you've struggled, you've done that. You know, you're here, you're doing it. And so thank you for your example.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much.